Today, we're going to talk about something you simply cannot avoid when learning Chinese: the characters. Over the years of teaching Chinese, I've received the same questions again and again. How can I actually remember Chinese characters? How many characters do I need to learn Chinese? And can I learn Chinese without learning characters? For now, let's keep these questions in mind, and by the end of this video, we'll come back to them. Before we talk about how to learn Chinese characters, let's start with a simple question. How many Chinese characters are there? In 1716, the Kangxi Dictionary, one of the earliest comprehensive Chinese dictionaries, recorded over 47,000 characters. Yes, 47,000. Now, don't panic. You don't need to know all of them. According to a large-scale study based on over 1 billion characters of real-life language data, knowing 595 characters gives you about 80% coverage. 964 characters gives you about 90% coverage, and knowing 2,394 characters gives you about 99%. So in theory, around 2,500 characters is enough for advanced everyday fluency. But let's be honest, that still sounds like a huge number, right? And this is the moment where many learners start to feel overwhelmed. You might be thinking, how am I supposed to remember all of this? The problem is most people try to memorize these characters one by one, like they are just random symbols. But they're not. The language you're learning is actually very special. Chinese is the only widely used logographic writing system in the world today. Most modern languages like English, Spanish, or Japanese are phonetic systems. They represent sounds. Chinese characters are different. They represent meaning. Now, historically, there were other logographic systems like Egyptian hieroglyphs or Mayan writing, but those are no longer used in daily life. Chinese is the only one that survived and is still actively used by over 1 billion people today. Chinese characters were invented thousands of years ago. They started as simple drawings like the sun, the moon, or mountains. Over time, they evolved and became more structured. But here's the key. Even though the shapes have changed, the logic behind the language is still there. So, instead of memorizing characters randomly, we should use that logic to our advantage. Today, I'm going to walk you through 2 simple methods to remember Chinese characters without pain. Number 1, structure-based memory. Instead of memorizing a character as a whole, break it down into parts and turn it into a story. For example, you might know these 2 characters, na and na. They look so much alike. The pronunciation is so similar, but the meaning is quite different. Na means that, while na means where. Let's break it down. The left part of na is the radical kou, meaning mouth. And when you're using this character to ask where, you are opening your mouth to ask a question. Therefore, you will now easily differentiate which one is where and the other one must be that. Let's see another one. I bet you recognize this one from probably the first Chinese word you learned, ni hao. Let's break it down. In this character, the left part is 女, meaning woman. The right part is 子, meaning child. In ancient Chinese culture, having a woman and a child represented a happy and complete family. So the meaning becomes good, 好. See? Not that hard. I have another example for you. See this character. It means bright. How do we remember it? Let's break it down. In this character, the left part is 日, meaning the sun. The right part is 月, meaning the moon. So sun plus moon together becomes brightness. So the character means bright. So the first method helps you break down a character, but again, we have another problem. If you learn characters one by one like this, it's still too slow. Therefore, I'm going to introduce you to the second method, the patterns. In fact, Over 80% of Chinese characters follow a very similar pattern. They are built with two parts. One part shows the meaning, the other part gives a clue about the sound. Let me show you an example. Look at these four characters. They all share the same part, ma, and here's the interesting part. They all pronounced ma, but just with different tones. Ma, 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 ma. Now look at the other side. Except the shared part ma, ma has the part 女, meaning woman or female. This gives a hint to connect with the meaning of the whole character ma, meaning mother. Ma has the part 口, meaning mouth. This gives us the hint that it is a question particle, that you have to open your mouth to ask a question. Ma has even more. It has two of the part 口, meaning mouth. This character actually means to scold. So when you are scolding someone, you feel like you are so mad that you need to have two mouths to yell at them. And the last one, it has the radical 石, meaning stones, which gives us the hint that in ancient times, people use stones to mark numbers. So the meaning of ma is code or number. From the example, we see that inside one Chinese character, one side gives you meaning, one side gives you pronunciation. So instead of learning four completely new characters, you are actually learning one pattern. Here's another example. Let's look at these three characters. They all share the part 清, and these three characters all sound similar. 清, 情, 请. And the other part tells you the meaning. This part means water. The character means clear, clear like water. This part means heart. The character means emotion. This part means speech. The character means to request or to ask. Do you see what's happening? Chinese is not random, it's actually highly structured. Most beginners try to memorize thousands of characters one by one, but you don't need to. If you understand the patterns, you can unlock hundreds of characters much faster. And more importantly, create your own little stories, because what makes sense to you is what you will eventually remember. Next time you see a new character, ask yourself two questions. What part does it have? And what do those parts mean? Now, think back to the question we started with. Do you have an answer now?